now that as long as Nigel Farage, let's hope so, is alive, he will be the next Prime Minister of this country. OK, it's no, shaking your head, Bill. It's a shoo-in.
They can't hide their fear of him. Rumour has it that Keir Starmer is quietly crafting a secret agreement with Brussels, a so-called Farage clause, meant to hit Britain with heavy costs if we ever dare to walk away from EU regulations again. But here's where it gets interesting. Watch how a confident Labour spokesperson tries to justify this to an ordinary voter, and how quickly it falls apart. If you enjoy breaking down stories like this, make sure to like the video, subscribe for more, and tap the notification bell so you never miss what's next. Now let's watch the clip. And afterwards, I'll explain exactly why this matters.
Welcome to the show, everybody. Adam, I'll start with you. For all intents and purposes, Brexit really wasn't that long ago. People were quite clear. They wanted a cut with Brussels. David Cameron came back from negotiating with the EU with the worst possible deal, which would have kept us in with no voting powers but a full alignment with the EU. That was rejected by the British people. And what we've got now is Keir Starmer putting in that exact same rejection of that vote. Yeah. So this is, in my opinion, a complete betrayal of Brexit.
Look, Keir Starmer has said in an interview that he prioritises Davos over Westminster. And the reason he said that is where the real power is. These liberal elites want to be governed and in line with European elites. It's a big club. And especially with Starmer, him and his lawyer mates, they've just given away Chagos, our own territory, and they're making us plebs pay for the privilege. Right, this is the most anti-British government of my lifetime. I'm horrified at what this man is doing. People like me voted in 2016 because we was given that right, our democratic right to vote. Keir Starmer wanted a second referendum because he didn't like the way that people like me, how dare we, go against what he believes. And this is what he's doing. He's taken us in via the back door. And it's a stitch-up because he knows, anyone in this country knows, Bill surely is starting to realise now that as long as Nigel Farage, let's hope so, is alive, he will be the next Prime Minister of this country. OK, it's no, shaking your head, Bill. It's a shoo-in, and they know that, and they want to try and punish us.
Linda, I'll come to you in a second, because I want you to. I know you've got a lot of notes. Linda, go on.
I feel as though Bill should.
Yeah, go on. All right, if you want to give it to Bill first, go on, Bill.
Well, firstly, Adam, take the tablets. Nigel Farage's shoo-in when he's on 28% of the vote historically is just not accurate.
The momentum, if you go on the streets and speak to people, you'll realise.
The momentum is coming down in terms of Farage's approval ratings. But anyway, let's deal with the facts. Shock horror. The European Union wants some protection from the madness of Brexit. Wake up and sniff the roses. The reality is that termination clauses are part of any trade deal. And the clause that you're talking about says that in the event that a future government, it doesn't say that government can't rip up the deal, but if it did, it would have to pay for the infrastructure costs and the reinstatement of border costs. I hear all the invective. You're not in line with British people. By 2 to 1, by 2 to 1, when you look at the polls, they regret Brexit. 65% of them want a closer relationship with the European Union. Why? Because we've lost out massively from Brexit. There was a study. Well, there was a study just before Christmas that was authored, I think, from Stanford University, that the cost to the UK exchequer in tax terms was about £90 billion a year.
Still less than we pay the EU.
Hold on. What are you talking about?
Look at the facts.
The annual cost was about £5 billion a year, and we benefited from that.
There's a lot of secretive costs that go with that. But UK investment's up 19.5%. We've got exports are up higher than the EU. So the EU's exports are 5%. Ours are around 8%. Employment has increased significantly since we left the EU. Unemployment in the EU is 6.2%. Ours is only 5%. We're doing way better off outside the EU.
Then why, Alex, don't people agree with you?
Well, because it's narrative, isn't it? It's narrative.
No.
And also, a lot of people voted for Brexit to take back control of their borders, which the Tories failed to do, dramatically failed to do, actually. So that's a massive part of it. But in terms of economically, we are better off outside the EU.
Let me come back to that independent study that said £90 billion a year lost in terms of taxes and public spending.
From the central issue at hand here. So the first thing we have to pay attention to is the election is 3.5 years away.
That's true.
And no one can predict what is going to happen. Not you and not you. OK? So the next thing is that this does seem to me, because it does involve a fine, is this is anti-democratic. You do not nobble the incoming government because you fear it's going to do something you don't want it to do, because we're a democratic country and we don't do that. We actually don't do that. So he sticks to Keir Starmer sticks to his policies, but he should not be tying the hands of any future government that comes in and disagrees with him. Because, as I said, we are a democracy.
Then we don't do trade deals and we lose out significantly. And this is about this is about food and agricultural products. And the estimates are that it would boost trade by 22%.
Well, the estimates for the EU stuff have always been actually massively overblown, and their exports are far lower than ours are now outside of them. And the next step we know is customs union, which will destroy all of the trade deals we've done. People voted to leave. That was only 10 years ago. It wasn't 50 years ago.
They voted 52 to 48.
They still voted to leave.
Yeah.
It's a democratic right. They wanted to get out of it. They haven't had the Brexit that they voted for. And time again, the Tories refused to implement it, and Labour is now going back on it, right? So I don't think, of course, British people are looking at it going, well, we didn't do anything with it. What was the point, right? Of course they're going to feel that way. And I'm not surprised they do. But they deserve to have what they voted for. If we keep on saying, oh, well, now these polls say this. The polls before Brexit, by the way, showed that overwhelmingly people would have voted to stay in the EU, and what happened? We left. So let's not take polls. If we're not taking election polls,
you can't run a government based on what
if we're not taking election polls for gospel, we shouldn't be taking polls about EU for gospel.
Alex, you say people are not getting what they voted for. Let's go back. Hold on. It wasn't clear what they were voting for. And let's go back.
It was so clear.
Hold on. Let's go back to that referendum.
Yeah.
I remember the Leave campaign saying that if you vote to leave the European Union, you can remain part of the customs union and the single market. That's due to the atrocious deal that was negotiated ultimately by Boris Johnson, was not on the agenda. It wasn't clear what people were voting for. The reality, I think, has been disastrous. Not just my view, that's the view of British people if you look at the opinion polling evidence.
Based on polls, which we've just said we shouldn't take for gospel.
How dare us, uneducated common folk, vote for freedom, vote for sovereignty? How dare we? The way you're sounding there, Bill, is why we voted out, because the elites and the politicians of this country treat people like me and the working man or woman as trash. And if we dare to do the opposite of what they want, they punish us, and that is what has happened.
Linda, I want to come back to you, because I get there's always going to be this Brexit divide between people, right? But my problem with it is that the EU is wanting a lot from us. And we're wanting a lot from the EU. One, Keir Starmer shouldn't be betraying his mandate, which he said he wouldn't be doing all these things. He's now gone and done them. Things that he pledged he wouldn't do. He's gone and done them. I think that's a betrayal for British people. And the EU is hammering us when they're asking us, oh, why don't you come and help defend Greenland? Why don't you cozy up with us instead of America?
I do think there's room for some kind of connection and some kind of support when it comes to military strategy. I think that would be completely advisable.
With a trade bloc. It's a trade bloc, let's be honest.
I'm talking about what we do about the geopolitical situation right now.
But the EU is a trade bloc. Let's remember that.
OK, but I am talking about the kinds of things our military leaders have been talking about all week long. And every single major, significant military person we have here says we have to have militarily a closer relationship with Europe in the current environment. But that's not the same.
Europe is not the EU.
I agree with that. I'm saying that. I'm making that distinction. I'm simply saying, OK, I agree with it in that one area, but we do not need to be moving back into Europe by stealth. Exactly. It's like a weird form of stealth taxing. We're going back in by stealth, and that's not fair to people.
No, but we're not going back in by stealth. Look, personally, I wish this Labour government was saying at the very least that we would rejoin the customs union, because there would be significant benefits to us. But the government hold on, the government is not saying that, and Keir Starmer is not saying that. He's saying no to rejoining the European Union, no to the single market, and no to the customs union, but yes to closer trading relationships. And
Bill,
whenever
if I
you,
had a
whenever
pound
you
for
do
every
a
time you said that they're not going to do this, and they've come back 2 weeks later and they've done it, I'd be a wealthy man today.
Well,
but that's the problem. You've got more sense than they do, Bill. And I respect you for that, because you look at things in an objective way. Keir Starmer doesn't have those values that you do. He's ploughing on with this completely headless chicken policy about everything. He hasn't got values on this.
If he intended to take us back, say, into the customs union, I think he would have made that clear by now. And yet, at every juncture,
But isn't that his problem?
Every juncture, he's saying no to that. I personally
Isn't
wish
that
he would.
exactly his problem, though? He does things by stealth. He does things in a half-hearted way, changes his mind. He's inconsistent. That is his precise problem.
Yeah, it's a big
Look, if this government cannot work out that increasing national insurance contributions and business rates and things on businesses hurt jobs, cost billions, then how can they be trusted with complicated EU law and business? How? They can't even sort this country out, yet they want to tie us into things that are complicated.
This whole mantra is stop the world, I want to get off. If you live in an inter-trading relationship and you want trade deals, that involves compromise. And the compromise of this is that we get a deal, we boost our agricultural exports by about 22%, according to estimates. But if any government chooses to rip this deal up, which would be their right, as is part of any trade agreement. As is the part of any trade agreement that you sign.
I understand that, but I also think these are meant to be our greatest allies. These are the people, the coalition of the willing, all this military, all this stuff. We're meant to be friends. And we're not friends, we're adversaries, and we're not looking at this realistically, and the British government currently is not taking it seriously, that actually they don't have our best interests. No. They're looking out for their super bureaucracy. That's their job. Our job is to look out for Britain, and I don't think this government has understood that very well. Look at the fisheries deal we've done. Look at all the other things we've been doing around the world, Chagos and all these other things. Britain is not a priority to them, and that is why I've got this big problem.
The British national interest, and British people back this up in polling, the British national interest is to have a closer trading relationship with the European Union, and that's what the government's trying to deliver.
Give us another referendum, we'll win it again. That's what I say, Bill. Give us another referendum, we'll win it again.
I tell you what we need to do.
When you warn people that Keir Starmer is giving up national control, they dismiss it as paranoia. So let's stop speculating and focus on what's actually happening. That so-called Farage clause tells us everything we need to know. Brussels see Starmer as someone they can pressure, and they also see that voters in Britain are starting to push back. This is a preemptive move. They want the rules locked in and untouchable before Reform UK has any real influence. It's a burn the bridge strategy aimed directly at British democracy. They'd rather punish the UK with penalties and economic restrictions than risk Nigel Farage leading a truly independent government. Starmer said he wouldn't undo Brexit, but agreeing to a system where Britain is fined for choosing its own path is Brexit in name only. That isn't cooperation, it's surrender. So here's the real issue. Should a Prime Minister be allowed to sign long-term deals that tie the hands of future governments? Or is this a deliberate attempt to undermine the will of the British people? Share your thoughts in the comments. And if you want more content like this, make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss what's coming next.